Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you.
Hello.
So I imagine some folks will trickle in, but we'll begin with some practice. We'll be working with the breath today, and we'll explore a few different ways of working with it. But let's begin just by the simple exercise of following the breath. Bring attention to your breathing at the abdomen, feeling the sensations associated with breathing at that location. Come into contact with your breathing, tuning to the rise and fall of the abdomen. Establish yourself there. As you bring your attention to that location, to the breathing at the abdomen, notice what it feels like physically. Perhaps it's fast or slow, warm or cold, pleasant or unpleasant, loose and free or tight and stuck. In this exercise of following the breath, there's not a right answer or wrong answer. Just become attuned to what is present there. We feel our breathing at the abdomen, accepting what's there, noticing what's there, allowing what's there. Simply follow your breath at that location, the abdominal area, becoming more and more attuned to what that feels like for you. Continue to keep your attention and your awareness on the breathing at the abdomen. But see if you can also, out of the corner of your eye, become aware of the state of your mind. Use the breathing as a kind of mirror or lens on what the state of your mind is right now. Is your mind tending towards focus or distraction? Are you thinking? And if so, about what? Or is there not much thinking? And you can also attune to what it's like emotionally for you. It's part of our state of mind. We're staying with the breath from moment to moment, but using it as a way to reflect to ourselves what the state of our mind is. In the same way that whatever the breathing is like is okay. Whatever we find about our state of mind is just fine. If your mind is distracted, contracted, if there are difficult emotions, lots of thinking happening, you're not doing this wrong. You're becoming more self aware because you've noticed that. Let this exercise of following the breath help you deepen in self awareness in this moment. Whatever you find about the state of your mind, continue to follow your breath at the abdomen, staying with those sensations from moment to moment. Very good. Nice work, everyone. Always nice to do a little practice together. So, as usual, we'll go around and introduce ourselves, and we'll say our name, and we'll also answer a question. And today's question will be based off of the exercise that we just did. You can share what your breath was like and also what your state of mind was like. So, what did you find about your breath as you're practicing, and what did you find about your state of mind? So I'll start, and then we'll go through the folks here at Oak in California, and then we'll pass it off to all of our friends that are joining us online. So I'm Tasshin. I noticed that my breath was smooth and pleasant, and my state of mind was a little tired.
Hello, my name is Zev. I noticed my breath was tight and uncomfortable, and my mind was tending towards distraction and thinking.
Hi, I'm Koshin. I noticed my breath was quite short and my state of mind was quite drowsy.
I'm Sky. My breath was long and pleasant, and my state of mind was that just having just come out of a week-long retreat, only early this morning, I felt it was easy for me to be with the breath, almost too easy. I found myself having to pull myself away from it and focus on managing the tech here. So that was interesting.
Hi, I'm Keller. My breath was weak and my mind was sad.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you here. And Margaret, you're up next.
I too have just come from a retreat and my breath was full belly, luscious. And my state of mind was tranquil and curious.
Thank you, Margaret. Pam, how about you?
Hi, everyone. Well, the only thing I can tell you about my breath is that I felt it there because my state of mind was drowsy and I think I fell asleep.
Great. Thank you, Pam. On to you, Gergely.
Hi, I'm Gergely, and my breath was gentle and my mind scattered.
Thank you. And Jenny?
Hi, I'm Jenny. My breath was short because I just came from lunch and my stomach is full. But otherwise it felt good. My state of mind is calm, and I was balancing kind of energy. I've had some racing thoughts earlier today, and it kept going there, but it also was calm. So whenever I pulled it back.
Great. Thank you. How about you, Johnny?
My breath was slow and low, and my mind was going 2-3 places at the same time almost.
Great. Thank you. Morgan?
I don't have words for my breath, and my state of mind is irritable.
Thank you for sharing, Morgan. How about you, Steve? And oh,
Hi, I'm Kim. This is Steve. My breath was shallow, and my state of mind was calm, but busy.
My breath was smooth, and my state of mind was peaceful, and I wandered.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, you too. How about you, Stanley?
Hi, I'm Stanley. I'm Tasshin's father. My breath was smooth and gentle, and my mind was a little bit distracted.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks everyone for doing that exercise and for sharing what was happening for you. No wrong answers. No wrong answers to what the breath feels like. No wrong answers to what your state of mind is. Just by becoming more aware of what your breathing is like and what your state of mind is like, you're cultivating mindfulness. It's less important what the exact details are and more that you are aware of what those details are. So thanks for taking time to notice that. It's funny. I always want to teach the same technique every time that I do these, which is following the breath. And I have mixed feelings about the fact that I want to teach that every time. The reason I want to teach it is that it's so delightful and interesting and fascinating to me at this point, and I want to share how exciting it can be and how delightful and impactful it can be. But part of me knows that it can be very boring and dull and dry and familiar, and I don't like it when meditation is dull or dry or familiar for me or for my students or for anyone. And so I think it's actually of the foremost importance that meditation be fun. And what technique you do actually isn't so important. And it's useful to try a lot of different techniques so that you can learn what kind of meditation is fun for you. So there have been times where following the breath wasn't very fun for me. And so I switched to doing different things. And then over time, strangely, mysteriously, this simplest, perhaps most common of meditation techniques is thrilling and adventurous. So I do keep returning to it for myself and when I teach. But of course, today and as always, you're welcome to do any technique that you like. There's no need to do the specific technique that's taught. It's nice to gather in community and practice together, even if you're not doing the same technique or procedure that everyone else is. It's just great to get together and practice. So feel free. You have total permission to do any technique you like today or any day that we get together. Part of the reason that I wanted to share about the breath today is something that I've noticed in the last months since I've started teaching with Maple and Oak. Which is that it's very common for people to have physical pain when they sit. And this is probably the number one question that happens, especially on retreat and in the early days of a retreat. At our retreats, usually there's a time for people to ask questions, and each day during the retreats, and usually first 2 or 3 days of a retreat, if there's new folks in the retreat, they'll say, hey, I've got all this pain. What do I do about it? I don't want to have all this pain. And so today is partly about answering that. Really wanted to dedicate some time to answering that question, what to do about the pain. Because especially when you're starting out something new, you want it to be fun and delightful and enjoyable and exciting. And we want meditation to be like that. And if it's painful, then there's a huge disincentive against practicing. Why would you want to practice something that hurts, that doesn't feel good physically? And of course, it can be useful to learn to work with the pain, to feel it, to see that it's vibrating and changing and malleable, and have equanimity with it and so on. And those are valid approaches. But there are also ways to just directly decrease the pain, which take time to learn, takes practice. It's a specific set of skills that you can learn. And so like other skills, it takes time to learn it, but there is a skill set there. You can learn to meditate in a way that decreases or even eliminates the pain if you so choose. You can also choose to work with the pain, to observe it, to turn towards it, to focus on it, to learn from it, be humbled by it, taught by it. But you can also decrease the pain. And unfortunately, it takes a little while to learn this skill, and it takes a little while to explain it. So the first few days of a retreat may or may not be the time to learn that skill, if only because it takes a little while to explain it. It takes, 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes to explain well, and then it takes a lot of practice to actually acquire the skill. So usually when I've been in that position and someone asks, hey, I've got the pain, I'm sitting, it doesn't feel so good, what do I do about that? I give them a shorter answer than I'd like about how to work with the pain, because there are other questions that are also pressing. And yeah, so I thought, why not dedicate a whole Saturday sit to that, so that there can be a nice recording of it, and I can share it with people, and you can share it with people, and here's how you work with pain during sitting with the breath. At least try to do that. We'll see how well we do today, but that's sort of the goal. And it turns out actually that this skill of using the breathing to decrease pain is an entryway into a larger set of applications of the same kind of skill. So of course we want to learn to breathe into pain, which we'll be talking about today, but you can also use that same skill in other settings. So say you're not on retreat and you have a headache, you can breathe into a headache. Or there's actually pleasant sensations in your body. You can breathe into those and increase them and spread them, which is very useful in intermediate and advanced stages of the practice. There start to be very pleasant sensations that we want to spread through the whole body. And it turns out that the same skill of breathing into pain is the same thing that you use to spread pleasant sensations through the body. So the same skill is reused in a different context later on. So it's worth cultivating this skill in meditation because it has many applications. It has applications in seated formal practice, but also in life, and not just with pain, but with pleasure. And now that I think about it, there are probably applications later on in the path that I haven't come across yet. Seems like a generally applicable skill. So that's why I thought I'd talk about it at some length today. So typically in mindfulness instruction, in contemporary mindfulness instruction in the West, the most common instructions for working with the breathing are simply to follow it, like we did earlier. You follow the breath, you become aware of the sensations from moment to moment at a specific location, maybe the abdomen, maybe the nostrils, maybe the whole body, but you're becoming aware of those sensations and you're not trying to change them. And that's a great technique. It's my main technique, the main one that I do most of the time. But there are many ways of working with the breath, and one of the fundamental sort of polar opposite ways of working with the breath is to change the breath. So rather than simply accepting it as it is, allowing it to be the way that it is, following it from moment to moment, you actively change or cultivate the breath to be a different kind of breathing, to have specific effects that you're aiming for. So you can breathe in ways that increase energy. You can breathe in ways that relax you. You can breathe into pain. You can breathe into pleasure. You can breathe all kinds of ways. There are many ways. There are ways to breathe that increase your body temperature, for example. It's crazy. It's wild to learn about. There are lots and lots of applications of breathing and many different techniques that have all kinds of different effects. And this is the kind of strategy that we'll be using today, of changing the breathing. It's good to be able to follow the breath. It's extremely helpful. It's a great technique. It's a good default. But it's also okay to know that it's okay to change the breathing, that it's a valid strategy as well, and that there are specific things that you can use the breath for. Typically, the ways that you change the breath involve changing the speed, or changing the location of where you're breathing, or adding visualizations of different kinds, or the rhythm, changing the rhythm of the breathing. You can move your body in different ways while you breathe. There's a lot of knobs or dials that you can shift that have different effects. And it can be useful to know that and play with it yourself. What happens if I breathe slower or faster, or in this way or that way? You can become a student of the breath with your own science lab right in your body. How to breathe in different ways. You can learn that for yourself just by trying things. And we'll give you a few tools and ideas today that you can experiment with, and you can feel free to try similar things on your own or adjust them. What if I do it this way? What if I do it that way? So that's the basic idea, is that you can follow the breath without changing it, or you can change the breath. And there's a few other critical concepts for this specific skill of breathing into parts of your body, say breathing into pain or breathing into pleasure. One is the distinction between what we'll call attention and awareness. So this is more of a practical distinction than you might say an ontological distinction. This isn't necessarily a truth claim about the state of the mind or how the mind works or what reality is, but more of a practical way of working with meditation with your own experience that can help make a lot of things easier. I'm not so sure whether it's, some people like to make truth claims about this, that this reveals how the mind works and things like this. I'm a little bit agnostic about that. They might be true, they might not be true, but it does seem to be a very practical and pragmatic distinction for a lot of meditation techniques. So another way to talk about this is how Shinzen talks about it, is the difference between foreground and background. So when we're looking at something visually with our eyes, we can see in the center, we can see something. Right now I'm looking at the little icon of my face on the Zoom screen. That's in the center of my visual awareness. And then there's a background as well. I can see the people in the room. I can see the other people in the Zoom room. I can see that it's daylight out. I can see my hands moving, but my focus is on the screen, right? And so the claim is that it's possible to look at your own experience in meditation in the same way. You can have something in the foreground and something in the background. And this is also described as attention, which is the foreground, and awareness, which is the background. Those are, I'll probably use those interchangeably today, but in a lot of techniques, it's helpful to put something in the foreground with your attention and have other things in the background with your awareness. This is actually what we did earlier. We brought our attention to the sensations of breathing at the abdomen and then had our awareness on the state of our mind, what thoughts there were, what emotions there were, how we were feeling in the rest of our body, whether our mind was tending towards distraction or concentration. We were aware of that even as we kept our attention, the foreground of our consciousness, on the breathing at the abdomen. And balancing these two things is extremely helpful in a wide number of meditation techniques and strategies. You can become more and more engrossed by the object of your attention and have a broader and broader awareness that encompasses more and more of your experience. And that interplay starts to become fascinating and delightful. You can become more and more concentrated on what your attention is noticing, while you have, for example, more awareness of the state of your mind and how your mind works and how different variables are affecting each other. And that starts to become fascinating. You know, oh, I notice that as I sit, my right leg contracts a little bit, and when I do that, it's easier for me to get distracted. That's the kind of thing that you can notice when you have a broad awareness that takes in a lot of different details, but then your attention is anchored to a specific object, like the breath. So that's helpful because in this exercise, we'll be keeping our attention on the breath or a specific point on our body, but we'll also be having awareness of other aspects of our experience, like other parts of our body, or how much pain there is, or what the state of our mind is. So if I describe attention or awareness or foreground and background, that's what I'm referring to. Another important concept is what might be called energy or chi or the subtle breath. There are different terms for this. The basic idea is that our body is alive. We're alive, now you know. And there's energy in our body. This is life energy, things that are keeping us alive. And there are different accounts of what this is, sort of ontologically, what a truth claim is about how this energy works. But this is something that we can actually attune to, you might say, phenomenologically in our experience, what it's actually like to be in our body. And that's actually what we're most interested in, rather than, say, a truth claim about what the universe is or how our bodies work. This is about what it's like to be in your body. And having this conception of energy describes a lot of phenomena that tend to come up and that you want to learn to work with. So for attuning to this, it can be helpful to know, like, just factually that you're alive, that there's oxygen coming in and out of your nostrils or your mouth, that and that's circulating through your whole body. And the idea is that you can draw the breath, draw oxygen, draw energy, however you want to talk about it, to specific parts of your body. You can learn to intend for breath, for energy, for attention to move to specific regions of your body. And that changes how you experience those parts of your body. So we already know, for example, that oxygen is circulating through the whole body. And then the claim is that you can sort of consciously become aware of that process and manipulate it so that things go a little bit easier for you. You can describe that as oxygen, controlling the oxygen in your body. You can describe it as controlling energy. I'm not actually so interested in what that is, again, from a ontological or truth claim perspective. All I know is you can do it. It feels really good, and it helps with a whole lot of things in meditation practice when you learn to do this. So for example, you can draw energy or oxygen or whatever you want to describe it as to a region that's in pain, and then it starts to feel better. And then you're enjoying the meditation more because you're not in pain. That's actually something that you can do. It's practically possible. Or again, there are sensations of pleasure in the body that you want to spread. You're starting to really enjoy it. There's sensations of pleasure or energy. You can spread those through your body in a conscious way. You can manipulate your experience. It's not a bad thing to do. You can shift it and adjust it and play with it. So that's what we'll be working with today. There are a lot of different ways to do this skill that we'll be working on. I'll be sharing a way that's worked for me, but I would encourage you to explore. There are a lot of different ways of doing what we're going to be doing today, and maybe the way that works for me doesn't work for you. And so you can try different things. I've heard a lot of people talk about visualizations, for example, that they use visualizations to draw energy into specific parts of their body. That's a thing that works for a lot of people. Hasn't worked so well for me. I tend to use the breathing more than visualizations. That's what works for me. But you can try visualizations if the way we do it today doesn't seem to be working for you. And there are other strategies as well. So you can explore, you can play. Just knowing that this is possible can invite a kind of exploratory attitude where you can discover for yourself, oh, what works for me? What's a different way to do this? Maybe you can find multiple ways of doing it and then see which ones work best in which situations or which one you enjoy the most, and then do that. So I'll be sharing from my own experience what tends to work with me, but I would encourage you to play with this and try different things and experiment and see what works for you. So we'll do some practice now. We'll have 2 practice periods, and in the middle, we'll take a little bit of a stretch break. The first half will be focused more on this technique or skill of breathing into parts of the body. And then the second half will be a slightly different exercise, but I'm hoping you'll enjoy all of it and benefit from it. So we'll start with some practice. There'll be a stretch break, some more practice, and then we'll have some discussion at the end. For this practice period, our very first order of business is to position the body in a way that's comfortable for us. Get the body comfortable. While this technique that we'll be practicing is useful for working with pain, that doesn't mean you need to be in pain during this exercise. You can feel free to be comfortable. You can do that in a seated posture, but you're also welcome to stand up or to lie down to feel comfortable. Position your body in a way that feels good for you, feels comfortable, where you're relaxed and at ease. Take the time to do that for yourself. And once you've placed yourself in a position that's comfortable for you, allow yourself to relax into that posture. Sweep your body, noticing if there's any muscular tension, and allow that to relax. Relax your body. Position your body in a comfortable posture and then allow it to relax, to be at ease, to drop any muscular tension that might be present. And of course, if you're sitting or standing, it's important for your spine to be upright. But if there's a question of whether to be upright or be relaxed, for today at least, err on the side of being relaxed, letting your body be comfortable. Ideally, we want to be both upright and relaxed, but sometimes we have to err on the side of one or the other. And for today, we'll err on the side of being relaxed and at ease. And to further increase this sense of ease, of comfort, relaxation, I'd invite you, if you like, to bring a gentle, subtle smile to your face. If for some reason you don't wish to do that, that's no problem. But if it feels okay to smile gently, just even a small smile, a half smile, bringing that up and maintaining it during this period may be very helpful. It turns out that physiologically, when we smile, chemicals are released in our brain that make us happy. So doing this is very useful in meditation. Because we can use our body and its chemistry to make ourselves slightly happier. And for today, that will help us cultivate this sense of relaxation and ease by sprinkling in a little taste of happiness. And similarly, as you maintain this relaxed posture and perhaps a slight smile on your face, you may find it useful to prepare your mind for this exercise. To say some sentences to yourself in your mind about what you're doing and why. So I'll say a few out loud now that might work for you, but you can also be playful and adapt them to something that feels more authentic to you and where you're at. These are just the sort of things that work for me. And it's okay if we're different. But I'll give you an example now, and if you like, you can say the same or different sentences in your mind to prepare your mind for this activity. It's wonderful that I have the chance to meditate today. Very grateful for this opportunity. And I get to practice a skill that will help me get better at meditation, that will help me in my life. How amazing is that? If I learn to breathe slightly better, just even slightly better, that might affect every breath I take for the rest of my life. Could have enormous benefits. How wonderful. If you like, you can say those or similar sentences, preparing your mind for this activity. We've taken time to relax our body, to nudge ourselves in the direction of happiness emotionally, and to get our minds on board by reminding ourselves why we're practicing today, what the possible benefits are. Spend just another moment sinking into those qualities of relaxation, of gentle happiness and contentment, and purpose. Physical relaxation, emotional happiness, and mental alignment. Take a snapshot of what this feels like, so that if at any time you notice your body is becoming tight, or emotionally you become unhappy, or your mind begins to wander, forgetting why this matters to you, you can make an adjustment and return here. If your body tightens, you can relax. If you become unhappy, you can smile gently. And if your mind loses its purpose, you can remind it why this matters. You can always come back here. Very good. Having established yourself here, bring your attention to the sensations of breathing at the abdomen. Previously, when we did this, we were simply following the breath. But now we're going to be changing the breathing. Bring your attention to this region. For just a moment, notice what it's like right now. And having checked in with what the breathing is like right now, we'll begin to adjust it. First, we're going to make sure that our breathing is healthy, optimized for health. If it's possible and comfortable for you, ensure that you're breathing through your nose. Generally speaking, nasal breathing is healthier than mouth breathing, provided that it's comfortable for you. Establish nasal breathing. It's possible to breathe through your nose or your mouth, but generally speaking, one is healthier than the other. In the same way, it's possible to breathe into your abdomen or into your chest, but abdominal breathing is healthier than chest breathing. In practice, it's actually the case that the healthiest breathing starts in the abdomen and then moves into the chest on the inhale, and then on the exhale, it starts from the chest and goes into the abdomen. But for today, for simplicity's sake, make sure that you're breathing in and out of your abdomen rather than your upper chest. That your breathing is centered in your abdominal area. I wouldn't recommend this, but it turns out that if you intentionally breathe into your chest and do so in a fast and forced way, you can essentially induce a panic attack. So I wouldn't recommend that, but knowing that is helpful because we're going away from that when we breathe into the abdomen, towards relaxed and calm breathing. And often if you're anxious, you'll find that there is some chest breathing happening. It may not be a full-on panic attack, but often we tend to breathe into that location when we're anxious. And so by breathing into the abdomen now, we can know that we're deeply calming our bodies. That slow, gentle abdominal breathing creates calm and relaxation. We're establishing healthy breathing by breathing in and out of our nostrils and in and out of our abdomen. Having made those shifts to the breathing, see if you can slow the breathing. Whatever speed the breath is at currently, see if you can slow it down just a little bit. It's as if we found that we're driving at 30 miles an hour. Let's see if we can slow down to, say, 25 miles an hour, just a little bit slower. It's noticeable, but not too dramatic. For this exercise, it can be helpful to slow down the breathing quite a bit, but you never want it to become uncomfortable. So we'll start by slowing down the breathing just a little bit. But know that you can always go even slower, provided that it continues to feel comfortable. At this point, we've established 6 different qualities in our bodies, minds, and breathing. There's quite a lot going on here. So let's just take a moment to check back in with each of the qualities that we've cultivated and make sure that they're all here, that we haven't lost any of them in the process. Check to make sure that you're still physically relaxed and comfortable. Check that you're easing yourself towards happiness with a gentle smile. Check that your mind is still engaged, still bought in to the purpose of this practice period. You may need to remind your mind why you're doing this. Check that you're breathing in and out of your nostrils. Breathing in and out of your abdomen. And that your breathing is slow. Having established all of that, continue to maintain it. But we're going to encourage the slowing of the breathing by gently squeezing our abdomens as we breathe, specifically as we exhale. It's as if we're placing our feet on a gas pedal or a brake, and we're easing it in, easing a pedal in. So as you exhale, for the first half of the exhale or so, just breathe normally, exhale normally, but towards the end, in the same way that you ease your foot onto the gas or a brake, gently squeeze your abdomen towards the second half of the exhale, encouraging the exhale to become just slightly deeper, slightly slower. Use your abdominal muscles to encourage that. We're intentionally using the abdominal muscles during the exhale to encourage slow abdominal breathing. And engaging the muscles of the abdomen tends to bring up a sense of energy in the body. It's as if we're lighting a fire in our abdomens. And the abdominal muscles are a bit like a bellows that will allow us to direct that sense of energy towards different parts of our body. But we have to light that fire, bring up that sense of energy before we can direct it. So for a few moments, continue to breathe in your abdomen in a slow, gentle way. And towards the second half of the exhale, engage the abdominal muscles. It doesn't need to be severe or intense. You're just gently using these muscles as if you were stretching a part of your body. It's not like you're doing sit-ups or crunches, vigorously engaging the abdomen. You're just slightly squeezing them to engage them. And only really on the second half of the exhale. And as you do this, notice if there's any sense of energy that rises up in the body. There may or may not be this sense of energy, but if there is, it might feel like tingling or warmth or vibrations or pulsing. If you feel anything like that, use your awareness to notice that in the background. Your attention is still on the breathing at the abdomen, but have awareness of any sense of energy that's cultivated as you do that. There's a lot of moving parts here that we've established. Relaxation in the body, leaning towards emotional happiness, mental clarity about our purpose, nasal breathing, abdominal breathing, slow breathing, and an intentional engagement of the abdominal muscles. If that feels like a lot, you can just stay here, maintaining this. And if all of that feels like too much, you can just focus on slow abdominal breathing. But if you're maintaining all of these qualities, and it feels interesting and exciting, we're going to add in one final piece. One final piece. So far, the attention has been on the abdomen. We've had awareness on the rest of our body, a sense of energy, and perhaps our state of mind. But we're going to make a shift to what we're paying attention to and what we're aware of. This is a shift in what we're paying attention to and what we're doing with our consciousness. But in our bodies and our minds, we want to maintain everything that we've done so far. So you want to maintain, for example, that slow abdominal breathing, that sense of energy, relaxation. Let that go on autopilot where it's still maintained in the body. But pick a specific part of your body to pay attention to. Maybe there's a place of your body that's in pain. Or just a part of your body that feels good or neutral. Pick a specific region of your body that we're going to try to breathe into. bring your attention to that place while maintaining awareness of everything that we've cultivated so far, and especially the breathing. Your focus, your attention is on a specific region of your body in the foreground. You still have awareness of the whole breathing process. That slow, gentle, abdominal breathing with a sense of energy that we've cultivated. It's as if the abdomen is a bellows. We're pumping air into a specific part of the body. The energy that's generated in our abdominal area will naturally flow to a specific region of our body if we bring attention to that region of our body. As you do this, notice if there are any changes to that region of your body. If there's pain, does it become more pleasant? Is there any sense of vibration or movement in that location? There may or may not be a change, but if there is, attune to that. Notice it. Continue to practice breathing into a specific region of your body. If you get distracted or this proves difficult in any way, you can always return to a previous element that we've established. Reestablishing slow abdominal breathing, for example, or relaxation and comfort in the body. It's always okay to return. If you're able to stay with this, it feels interesting. Keep breathing into a specific part of your body. You can stay with the same part that you selected originally or shift it even to a different part. We continue to work on this skill of breathing into a specific part of your body. So it took a little longer than I expected. So we'll take a stretch break now. We'll come back at 35 minutes past the hour. So if you like, feel free to stretch your body or use the restroom or whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, and then we'll come back for some discussion. As you're ready, you can come back. So this is a time for any questions that you may have, or comments or reports. Anything at all is fine.
I wasn't sure about this, but then you said anything at all is fine.
Mhm.
I had a really wonderful panic attack this week. And I feel that panic attacks have gotten a very bad name from Western psychology, and that they're known in other ways, potentially within other cultures, although it's not something that I've studied, and that they can be deeply spiritual and also very healing in terms of chronic pain. Having had arthritis for many years, what I notice when I'm having a panic attack is that it kind of lubricates all of my joints in a really wonderful way. And when I was a therapist, I began to encourage my clients to let their panic attacks happen rather than to resist them. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about panic attacks from the moment that you mentioned panic attacks forward. And I felt that I wanted to correct the record on panic attacks, and also it doesn't contradict your teaching on panic attacks, because of course there are times when having or being in the midst of a panic attack may not be the most functional thing. But when possums have a panic attack, I think we call it a freeze response. And it's actually really effective to stop predators. So I was also reflecting about that while I was processing everything during this meditation, and thinking about how fear is a quality in our bodies that often creates a response from other humans of not wanting to be close to us. Sometimes it creates a response of flocking together, but sometimes it creates an aversion or a resistance. And so it just made me think about the possum that I saw, and how it might have actually made us want to distance ourselves from it by shaking. And so I just thought of all these wonderful ways that panic attacks can be experienced. And I didn't want to keep it to myself. Because after the panic attack I had this week, my body felt so amazing. And I thought other people may want to experiment.
Well, thanks for sharing that perspective, Morgan. It's definitely a different take than I've heard before, and I appreciate hearing from you about it. And certainly happy that your own experience of panic attacks has been wonderful, as you say. It's really nice. Not usually an adjective that you hear associated with them. I do think, based on my own experience of them, it seems like great advice to relax into them if they do happen, rather than fighting them. That seems like great advice. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I can't, for myself, recommend that someone induce a panic attack, which you can do by breathing into the chest, especially in a rapid way. I I can't recommend that. I don't recommend that, but but certainly it seems like good advice that if they happen, that you can relax into them, and also to have a perspective that they could be helpful in some way. That seems useful to mention. They probably don't happen for no reason, so you can work with them and learn from them if they do happen. So I appreciate hearing your perspective and hearing some different information about it. I'm really glad you shared that.
I find that panic attacks are a really wonderful way to let go of fear. And that is what gives me the most joy about them.
One thing I'm curious about for anyone is that technique that I taught was a little bit more involved than what I usually teach. A lot of moving parts there, a lot of steps, sort of scaffolding different things on top of each other. And if anyone had difficulties with that or was confused about something I said or wanted clarification, I'd love to hear that so I could both get the feedback of what it was like to hear the instructions, but also to support you in learning the skill if that's useful.
I found it not a struggle, but like it was really work, made me work a lot with all the parts. And also like to the extent that I felt like this is too much, I can't do this. But then I remember what you said about being grateful and happy for the opportunity to meditate. And I just grasped onto that and worked with that in like, oh, how grateful I am to have the possibility to struggle like this, to work, to not give up, but to keep going. And more than this practice, I felt grateful that I found like a sentence that can help me to meditate, because it so often just sucks. It's so boring. Often it's hard. I hate it. I don't know why I do it. But this kindness I was able to bring to myself, but also into my own wanting to do it, was like really something else. And in a way, I felt it was too much, but being able to appreciate my own effort, it was just okay. Like it was like not too much at all. Like really, it's almost like the appreciation of the struggle was like an embrace of my investment, so to speak. So that would be my report on my.
Oh, that's a great report, Johnny. Really appreciate that. I'm grateful for you for saying all that and for being here and for the attitude you demonstrated of how wonderful it is to be able to practice. And that was definitely the right approach. And just a few things come up hearing you say all that. So first off, this is being recorded, and so if this was something that people were interested in and wanted to practice, it's the sort of thing that would benefit from doing multiple times. So you're always welcome to go back to the recording. And for me, I've had to practice the skill a lot to get the hang of it, and it takes time and practice, and it's not something that I would expect that if you were brand new to it today that you'd master it by the end of this guided meditation, but that you'd have sort of a understanding of what you're trying to do and have some tools for working with it. Also, that the way we approached it was kind of as a scaffold. So there's one step and then a second step and then a third step. And if you are doing it again, if you do listen to the recording and try it again, you can just notice where it starts to get hard and stay there, you know, and or go back to the beginning ones. And then once you feel like you can juggle all the different things, then you can move on to the sort of other steps. And we're actually capable of doing a lot more than we think we are. So you can reach the point where you can juggle all these things and balance them, but it takes time, it takes practice, and it makes total sense that it would feel like too much, especially on the first go. That doesn't mean you can't do it. It just takes time and practice like any other skill. And so would really encourage folks to go back and listen to the recording, try it again a few times. You know, you can do it as many times as you like, and it might take, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it took 10 or 20 practice periods to really get the hang of this, but it is possible, and it is a really useful skill and practice, and it makes total sense if it feels overwhelming or like too much, especially on the first time, but doesn't mean you can't do it, just mean it takes practice.
And I forgot, like, I also felt like your overall patient with your own description was really made it more clearly for me what you were trying to make me build. So I saw like the steps clearly because there was so much time for me to build. So that I also had like all the time like leaning into your guidance, really trusting, and that helped me in good times and bad times, keeping the focus, so to speak. Yeah. So thanks again, man.
Yeah, that's great, Johnny. That's great. That's exactly the right attitude, and you know, I'm just glad that you sort of rolled with the punches and adapted it to what you're ready for today, and hope you keep going with that. Any other reports or questions about the technique or really anything at all? Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, when bringing, focusing energy into a part of my body with my breath, I've sometimes, or most of the time, I tend to avoid breathing into parts of my head, because I tend to have a lot of energy get caught up in that place already to begin with. And I've heard from some other meditators that it's good to avoid channeling energy into the head using the breath. So I was just wondering what your perspective was on that.
Yeah, generally, from my understanding, you want energy to go down rather than up. The description that I've heard is that energy is a bit like hot air. It just tends to rise naturally. And so there's no trouble with the energy moving up. And if we have too much energy moving up, it can cause problems, but that you want it to go down. And so bringing energy into the lower part of the body helps counteract the natural tendency for it to go up. That said, you know, if you have pain in your shoulders or something, or in your neck, you can use this skill to breathe into those parts. And probably there's not, I don't know, this is speculative, so take it with a grain of salt, but probably if there's pain in those parts of the body, there's not actually energy or much energy going to them as is. So yeah, but in any case, it's fair game to breathe into like painful parts of the body, even if they're in the head or the neck or the shoulders or something like that. You just don't want to actively cultivate the energy going up in general, but it's fine to experiment with that if there's a need to.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments?
Can you speak to any relationship between breathing into different parts of the body and drowsiness? Right? Is it possible, for example, to counteract drowsiness with bringing the breath to particular parts of the body, or conversely, is breathing into particular parts of the body likely to induce drowsiness?
I'm not aware of, off the top of my head, specific parts of the body that cause drowsiness or energy. There might be such parts. I wouldn't be surprised, in fact, if there were, but I'm not aware of them. The thing that tends to work for me is, well, of course, drowsiness is a few things. There can be a physical drowsiness where you haven't gotten much sleep. Makes sense if you're tired. There can be emotional drowsiness where you're not you may or may not be physically tired, but you're just kind of exhausted from, say, engaging with people or something like that. Often get that. And there can also be an energetic aspect to fatigue where you're not necessarily physically tired. You may or may not be emotionally tired, but the energy is the way that it's flowing is not wakeful. It's tending towards drowsiness. And so for me, rather than breathing into a specific part of the body or to create wakefulness, the thing that helps the most is just overall cultivating energy flow in the body, that can sort of decrease energetic or emotional drowsiness, and even mitigate physical drowsiness if there is energy flow. So if I talked about this as a kind of fire or a bellows, and if you really get the fire going, you really get it pumping, which you can learn to do with practice, then it starts to be really flowing through the whole body, and you can just keep that growing. You can keep putting wood in the fire. You can keep the fire tended and let it grow and grow and grow. And if your mind body is tending towards drowsiness, then there's no problem with just adding more wood to the fire. And that, if you maintain that, that will, counteract the tendency towards drowsiness and instead move towards wakefulness. And ideally, as you do that, or really with all of these strategies, you want to notice how pleasant it is and soak up any pleasure or delight or joy that comes with any of this. Even if it's small, you really want to attune to and savor any enjoyment or pleasure or satisfaction that comes from it of any kind. You want to soak that up, because that creates a reward cycle. So, you can notice that it doesn't feel very pleasant to be drowsy. It's tricky because drowsiness typically feels like a mixed pleasure where it's partly pleasurable, but it's also partly not very pleasurable. And so you can attune to how unpleasant drowsiness is, even though it is partly pleasant. You can attune to how unpleasant it is. And then if this happens where you increase the energy a lot and get that sense of energy flowing through the whole body and it's very loud, then you can notice that dissipates, and instead wakefulness is actually quite pleasant. As far as I can tell, be curious, maybe other people have different experience of it, but in my experience, if wakefulness is just uniformly pleasant, whereas drowsiness is partly pleasant and partly unpleasant. Whereas you can actually enjoy wakefulness on its own. And there can be, when you notice that drowsiness is partly unpleasant and that wakefulness is sort of uniformly pleasant, you can cultivate what they describe as devotion to wakefulness. You're like, this is uniformly pleasant. It's also wholesome. It's good for me. And I want more of that. This other thing is kind of unpleasant and it's not good for me. But wakefulness is pleasant and it's good for me. So you become devoted to it. You see how much better it is and how much more wholesome and beneficial it is. And so you become, as they say, devoted to it. It's not just that that's actually meaningfully different, devotion to wakefulness, from being wakeful. You want to ideally maintain that devotion to wakefulness regardless of whether you're wakeful or drowsy. It's very natural for the mind and body to become drowsy as you practice. That's no problem. Allegedly, that goes away if you're an arhat. So that's great. But until we're there, you're going to get drowsy sometimes. That's no problem. That's very normal. But you want to maintain that devotion to wakefulness. You want to cultivate this attitude of wakefulness is good for me, drowsiness is not helpful in meditation, and notice that it's unpleasant, notice that it has negative effects, and then notice that the wakefulness is pleasant and has good effects. And another aspect of that is just that this is all within the context of meditation, of course. So drowsiness is fine off the cushion, but when you're practicing meditation, drowsiness is, I don't know how to put this politely, but sort of a waste of time, right? If you're falling asleep when you're intending to meditate, then you're not using that time for the meditation. It'd be like, I don't know, falling asleep during a yoga class that you paid for or something. If you paid for a yoga class and then you just fall asleep the whole time, then you might be bummed out because you paid money to be at that class, and you have to set aside time to meditate, and you're intending to deepen your practice. And so if you fall asleep, then that's time lost. But if you're wakeful, then you're able to make use of the time. So it's not that drowsiness is intrinsically bad. I mean, we need to sleep. It's good for us, and so on. But from the purpose of trying to meditate, we want to cultivate this devotion to wakefulness. It's that which is different than whether or not you ever experience drowsiness. It's not that you magically escape drowsiness just because you suddenly become devoted to wakefulness. It's instead that you realize this is really important. This is precious. It matters. I'm going to be wakeful. And from there, it's, you want to cultivate energy. You want to cultivate energy and decrease the drowsiness, increase the wakefulness. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. Let's just see if there are any other questions first. Any other questions or comments? Great, we've got one from Koshin, so I'll pass the mic to him. Oh, I might have, no, it's good. Sorry.
Why is it that when we breathe into a body part, it usually eventually relaxes?
I'm not completely sure. As I was said earlier, I was sort of separating what you might call the phenomenology of this from what you might call like of it. I don't have a good account completely of what is and why and so on. I'm more interested in what it feels like in my body and how to work with it. But this definitely does happen. Things do relax. I mean, you can breathe into pain. You can also breathe into muscular tension, whether or not it's painful, and it does tend to relax. And I could speculate as to why, but I don't know why. So I'm not going to answer other than to affirm that is a thing. It's good that you noticed that, and feel free to keep doing it. Yeah. Yeah. If you badger me later, I might speculate about it, but they'd just be speculation. So, yeah. Is that a comment or question?
Pam, saying what a wonderful statement, devotion to wakefulness. Thank you all so much for today. Another wonderful Saturday.
Great. Thanks, Pam. Really glad you could make it. Any last questions or comments? All right. Well, as always, I welcome any feedback that you may have by email. This was a little bit experimental, so really would welcome any feedback or further questions or comments to my email. My email is Tasshin, that's TASSHIN @monasticacademy.org. Would love to hear from you. There's no need, but always open. And really glad you could all make it. We're blessed to have this community and have you here as part of it. And we hope that this practice period was beneficial to you and that you carry it into the rest of your week, rest of your lives, and that it touches everyone in your life. So thanks for joining. Really grateful you're here and hope to see you next week.